Hi, I'm Courtney Webster, and this is Your Recovered Life. And today I'm so happy to be talking to Ellie Schoenberger, and you're going to see why. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She is the president and founder of Shining Strong, a nonprofit dedicated to helping people struggling with addiction and celebrating recovery. She's the writer of the popular blog One Crafty Mother, which she'll tell you about. She's the founder of Crying Out Now, a blog where women tell their stories of addiction and recovery and offer each other amazing support. She is also co-founder and co-host of The Bubble Hour, an online talk radio show where real people tell real stories of alcoholism and recovery. She is a jewelry artist and designer who runs a successful jewelry shop, Shining Stones, via a website and in-home store, Two Little Birds. It's Two Little Birds, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Ellie's honest and open writing about alcoholism and recovery led to an appearance on The Oprah Winfrey Show and interviews in USA Today and Redbook magazine. Ellie is out and proud. In November of 2011, Ellie was diagnosed with stage 4 tonsil cancer, and after chemotherapy, radiation treatments, and surgery, she was declared to be in full remission in April 2012. You can read about her entire cancer journey. It's online too, and she lives outside of Boston with her top priorities, her children, Greta and Finn, and her amazing husband, Steve. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Okay, so you know what we're talking about. We're talking about people finding their calling, their recovery, that thing that lights them up in recovery. And I am really curious to hear, I've heard your story before, so I'm just going to ask you lots of questions. What happened? You got sober. Well, first of all, did you have a calling before you got into recovery?
No, I would say not really. I remember I met my husband when I was in my early 20s and sort of in my late 20s and early 30s. He's a guy that we were dating, and he's really interested in a lot of things and has a lot of passions and hobbies and things. And he would always scratch his head and look at me and say, what are you passionate about? What is something that really lights your fire? And I remember thinking, I'm supposed to have an answer for that, but I didn't. I had some hobbies and things I'd had as a child, but nothing that I really felt like a calling or something that I was pulled to do. So before I got sober, it was work and drinking. A lot of drinking.
And you were really good at both until you
weren't,
right?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah, because you had some fierce success in business, I would say.
I did.
Okay, but it didn't feel like your calling. I think that's so. I love hearing that people weren't clear on it before they got sober, because I felt the same way. So I'm like, same. Okay, so then what happened? So you got sober, and what happened?
Yeah, I got sober in 2007, and it was in the late summer, early fall. And about 5 or 6 months after I got sober, I would say, I felt. So I sort of had my feet under me at that point, and I was getting the hang of this recovery thing, and I felt very committed to it finally. But I felt that sort of hole in the middle of me, like I really needed something that would be a creative outlet or something that would give me passion and purpose. And at this point, I had two children. My children were 5 and 2, so both home most of the time, which is challenging. In terms of finding yourself, because a lot of my time was dedicated to them, obviously. So I decided I needed a hobby. I was thinking back to my husband's words before and thinking, there's got to be something I can do. And I would literally go to the hobbyist stores that are local to me, like AC Moore and Michael's, and I would, like a mad woman, I'd stick my son in the little front cart, my daughter would hobble along beside, up and down the aisles looking for something that would be a hobby. And I was very purposeful about it. I mean, I really was sort of like, is it going to be this? Is it going to be this? And I tried, I think I tried painting or, sort of sketching, like pencil sketching first. And I, like any good alcoholic, I went completely over the top, and I bought all of the supplies, and I loved the supply buying and organizing process. And I came home, and I realized pretty quickly that that's something that's either in you or not in you. And so I was trying to sketch, and it wasn't perfect, and I couldn't, lots of crumpled paper to evidence the failure of that endeavor. So I went back to the stores, and I tried needle pointing. I still have framed somewhere, not on my wall, but a really sort of lumpy, crooked, lighthouse needlepoint thing that sort of reminds me. I know one part of the lighthouse that sort of cinches in on one side, and it took every ounce of willpower I had to finish that. But it felt more like a chore, like here's me doing a hobby and having a passion. Like it didn't feel like something that was coming from the inside of me. So back to the store we went, and was just about ready to give up and check out. And I looked down and I saw a little beading kit, a full beading kit with little stones and crystals and everything that you need to make a bracelet or a necklace. And I felt that thing. I went, oh, I bet that's something I can do. And I also remembered as a child that I loved rock collecting. I had a rock polisher, and I've always lived near the beach and collect stones and was really into the meanings behind the different stones. And so it was more than just, oh, here's something that can occupy my time. I felt that little tiny tug of, I like these things. So I brought the beading kit home and I spread it all out and I got all organized and just played with it. I was way too impatient to actually take a jewelry class. Why would you do that? You know, I went out, Googled online, how do you make a bracelet, and looking for the fastest possible way to become, you know, a jewelry maker. And I knew pretty quickly that this was the right hobby for me, because when you're making a bracelet or a beaded thing, if you get halfway through it and you don't like it, you take the beads off and you start again. So it didn't have that feeling of permanence. When you put a paintbrush on paper, you feel like you can't go back. You're committed. You've got to keep going forward. And so within, I would say 2 or 3 weeks, I was hitting those stores every day and buying more beads and researching the meanings behind them even more, and buying little Tupperware containers to store them all in. And I would be up until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, totally content making jewelry. And I realized that the crazy voices in my head stopped when I was doing that. I was completely absorbed in the process of doing this. Very calming, very therapeutic, and creative. Like the creative self inside of me was waking up.
Wow. And then my shoulders just dropped when you said first I was like, oh, is she tweaking up there? But then you're like, no, I just felt so good. That's great. So then what happened? Like, because I love, what I particularly love about your story is how the threads, like the threads just weave together and they just form this amazing thing. But it started with this. So I love that the first thing you felt was that like pull.
Absolutely.
And then what happened?
Well, I decided that making jewelry in the privacy of my own home wasn't enough, because I was really starting to experience a lot of the gifts of recovery and feeling like I was getting me back and feeling passionate about something for the first time ever, pretty much. And a friend of mine, or my brother, told me about Etsy.com, which is an online venue where you can really easily set up a shop to sell your jewelry on the World Wide Web. So I decided that I would set up a little store on Etsy, but I didn't want to just sell jewelry. I sort of thought, you know, I want to sell recovery jewelry. I can really weave in a lot of the things that I'm learning about myself and about recovery into making pieces that have, you know, little charms that say hope or serenity or gratitude. I also figured out which stones and crystals are reflective of themes of recovery, like amethyst is the sobriety stone. Who knew they had a sobriety stone? So I made a shop description that talked about the fact that I was a woman in recovery from alcoholism. And it was a really important part of my own evolution in owning my disease, but furthermore, even celebrating recovery and starting to become almost proud of the things that I was able to achieve. So I set up this little shop, and I had little business cards made with the URL on how to get to this shop. And it had been open for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I wasn't telling anybody about it. Sort of, you know, I got that far, and then I got scared. And I went to a play group with a bunch of local moms, and I was wearing one of the necklaces that I made, and they all commented on it. They said, oh, I love that necklace, and where did you get it? And I remember when I started, I would put sort of a question mark at the end of everything, like, I made it, you know, in my store. I had a hard time really self-identifying as an artist or a jeweler, but I handed out my business cards, and I was so excited. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to make some sales, and this is going to be great. And I was about halfway home, driving home, and I went, oh, they're going to know. When they go to my store, it says right up at the top, you know, about the artist. She's a woman in recovery from alcoholism. And of course, I had a moment of sheer terror, what I call like a vulnerability hangover, where I thought, oh, what did I just do? And I kind of thought, well, it's out of my hands now. Let's just sort of see where this goes. And it was a really beautiful thing that unfolded, because I, of course, thought all of them were gossiping and the whole town was talking about me and being in recovery. And did you know she was an alcoholic? And I didn't get that. What I got was people who sort of said, good for you, and tell me more about that. Or I have a mother or a brother or a sister or a friend who struggles. And immediately I got that sense of community, and it was completely unintentional. I mean, I stumbled into it, and it also allowed me to sort of be able to talk more openly about my recovery in a way that was under my control. You know, it didn't feel gossipy. It felt very positive and focused and compassionate. And so that the so evolution of my shop and the evolution of my recovery kind of, or the jewelry making, not really the shop, but the jewelry making and my recovery went hand in hand, where I was getting braver as an artist and coming out there and saying, you know, do you want to buy something I made? When somebody says no, they don't want to buy something you made, it feels like they're saying no to you.
I don't like
personally,
you.
I don't like you and everything you stand for. And it helped me stay safe in a lot of ways. The more that people learned in town that I was in recovery, I could go places and feel safe and understood. I could go to parties or to get-togethers, and people didn't ask me why I wasn't drinking. But more than that, they were asking me about my jewelry, about my creative process. And I began to sort of feel a sense of pride, not ego, but pride about the fact that recovery has given me this gift, and I want to be able to share this gift with the world. And it really helped me step out from behind the shame and the secrecy of feeling like I'm an alcoholic and nobody can ever know.
Right. How cool. What a neat byproduct. Just kind of like an evolution rather than having to like, all right, I'm coming out. It's just kind of, it happened for you.
Yeah, it was a real, and if I had set out to do that, it wouldn't have happened that way. Right. It was sort of, it had a momentum that was bigger than me right from the very beginning.
Cool. So then you started your blog, right? Just to write about jewelry making?
Yes, somebody said if you're going to be selling jewelry, especially online, you need to have a blog where you talk about jewelry. And I thought, nobody wants to read a blog about jewelry, so I'm going to do a blog about creativity. And so, again, why would I talk to other bloggers or take a class? I just Googled, how do you start a blog? And found Blogger as a platform, and I just, I sort of just started writing. And in my first post, I think I did write about creativity. And I didn't have that tug. It didn't feel authentic to me. It sort of felt that something was off, something was missing. So I began to write about what I just described, how those two worlds were intersecting between creativity and passion and giving back and recovery, thinking that nobody was ever going to read this. This was just this little, and it was extremely therapeutic for me to be writing about it. And it took off pretty quickly. What I learned is that people are really hungry for that, not only that authenticity and that vulnerability in writing, but also learning about alcoholism and addiction and recovery, because at least back, you hear about it more now, but back in 2008, 2009, there weren't a lot of people that were talking about it publicly. So my readership it took off pretty quickly, and the emails started coming in. I need help, or my friend needs help, or can I buy my friend this bracelet with her sober anniversary on it? Again, I had that vulnerability hangover feeling of, oh, okay, I wasn't looking to be a, sort of out in front of the pack talking about this. But so many incredible people came into my life as a result of it. And I got so much encouragement from people saying that this is, I love your writing and I love your jewelry. And it helped me sort of begin to see, am I a writer? Am I an artist? Like, is this the thing that I've been looking for and not knowing I've been looking for it for all these years? So the blog started over here as something as a means, a marketing tool is what I thought it was going to be. And after the second post, it turned into a blog about addiction and recovery and motherhood and humor and life and balance. But the underpinnings of it really were talking about recovery.
And then what happened?
Well, fast forward to 2009, actually, and that's when I was contacted by USA Today, who said it's extremely hard to find people who will talk about addiction and recovery publicly. So can we talk to you about this? We're doing an article about mothers who struggle with drinking. And then about 3 or 4 months after that, which I did with some friends of mine, and it was a good introductory experience to speaking in a public forum, that I really don't control where this goes. It's not like choosing who I hand a business card to. This was USA Today. It was national, and how I was very happy with how the article came out, but I learned that it was my first taste of people criticizing me a little bit about, when you speak about recovery, you're supposed to speak about it this way, or do you have an ego problem, or who do you think you are? And there was a little tiny bit of feedback like that, but as any good alcoholic, of course, I focused on the negative stuff and not the legions of people who were supportive of it. But I learned that as these things came my way, I was learning about my own personal growth, and that these were obstacles that I had to push through. That USA Today calls, and I say, sure, why not? And then a little under a year later, the Oprah Winfrey Show called. They had read a blog post that I did talking about sort of the collective denial about mothers who drink, that's still a stigma that the world really struggles with. And I ended up on the Oprah Winfrey Show with my husband, and that was an interesting phone call to make to my parents to say, do you mind if I tell 7 million people that I'm an alcoholic? And that brought a lot of attention my way. It brought a lot of attention to the blog, and it was terrifying, I won't lie. It was very, very scary, but it was scary in that really exhilarating kind of way. Like, I think really important things are happening to me personally, not just to what people are doing as a result of reading my story or hearing my story. And there were critics, and there were some tough conversations that I had with some people that I knew in my recovery community who thought that I shouldn't be stepping out and talking about this in such a public way. So I really had to dig deep. I think of myself as a recovering people pleaser too. So I had to get comfortable with the idea that not everyone's going to like what I'm doing. And that brought tens of thousands of more readers to my blog. And stop me if you have any specific questions.
No, this is great.
What ended up happening was I was a little tired of telling my story. I sort of thought it's great for me to be out there telling my story. But I feel like how much of that can I really, it really is all about me. And I was starting to get kind of uncomfortable with that. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if we started a site where women could submit their stories of addiction and recovery. I wonder if anyone would do it. If it's helping me and it's therapeutic to me and people are hungry for this kind of information, and knowing that people are far braver from behind their computer screens than they are in real life. So again, without any forethought whatsoever, 10 o'clock at night, I started a new blog called Crying Out Now, and I sort of put it out there on my social media outlets that I was starting this forum, and that if you wanted to submit your story, you could do it anonymously, but that I felt that there was a need, that people were really hungry to understand about how other people struggle and to know that they weren't alone. And just like with One Crafty Mother and just like with my jewelry, it really wasn't me. It was the response that came. It was like a tidal wave. It completely overwhelmed me, but not in the bad way, in that, wow, we really are putting our finger on the pulse of something big here. And that became extremely popular. And when I say words like popular or successful, I mean in sense of like building a community, a strong interwoven community of support. And it took the laser beam off my forehead, which I needed, because like any passion that you have with writing or artistry or creativity, if it starts to feel like a job, it loses a little bit of the thing that sustains you as a person. And Crying Out Now grew and grew and grew. And about a year ago, I thought to myself, well, the written forum is great for storytelling. What about podcasts? I wonder what that would be like. And I found a great platform online to be able to do an internet radio show, talk show, and that fed these shows directly to podcasts. And also realized at this point in time that this had gotten bigger than that I could handle on my own. So I founded the nonprofit, Shining Strong, and I talked to some trusted friends also in recovery to help me run these things, so that it wasn't just the mad woman behind the curtain running all of these things individually. And that has also brought a lot of community, to find people that really want to be involved and really want to help. And so Shining Strong has been around since earlier this year, since April of this year, and it's named after my dad, who I lost suddenly in 2011. My maiden name is Strong, and he's somebody who gave back a lot in his life. So Shining Strong has been growing and building a community as well, and it really sort of blows my mind how what started with glancing down at a beating kit in Michael's turned into, without any real intention on my part. My intention was only to keep sharing vulnerably and authentically and finding community. And as that continued to grow and be a positive healing thing for me, I thought, as long as it's healing, I'll keep doing it. Has turned into Shining Strong with the Bubble Hour and Crying Out Now and my own blog and writing for other publications like Redbook, and talking publicly about recovery and getting involved in other nonprofit organizations. Talk about filling a hole that you felt was inside of you. My life is richer and fuller than if I had designed it, I would have sold myself short.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I just love it. I love when we first talked about it, how you talked about just trolling the aisles looking for a hobby. And
Yeah.
because, I always wanted to be the person, I think I've told you before, like, I wanted to be the person who was like, the marathoner or the yogi or the roller derby or just like mountain class, something that I just was so like passionate. You couldn't stop me from doing it. I was just like, no, not really. I have some
Well, I think
interest.
that's funny too, because some people would say, maybe I should take up running. You and I would say, maybe I should be a marathoner. Other people would say, maybe I should do yoga. And you and I would say, maybe I should be a yogi, that 0 and 10, what, 5? Who does 5? I'll go for 10. Thank you very much.
And then if I don't want to do the 10, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, if I can't, 9.5, that's not good enough. This one goes to 11, right?
Right, exactly. That's so cool. So I love how it wove together. I wonder if there were times along the way. So, what I really hope from this, by sharing these stories, is for people who are questioning, like,
Hmm.
what's my thing?
Yeah.
I don't, ah, I don't have a hobby, or I don't have a passion, or I maybe do, but I'm not quite sure. I want them to hear from, you and people like you who feel like they really have found a thing that lights them up in recovery, and how they found it and how they followed it along. And you've just so beautifully explained how one thing led to the other. And it sounds like it happened really gently. I wonder if there were any parts along the way that were like, I don't know, that need to be shared too.
Yeah, I think as you were framing that question and talking about other people who might be listening and thinking, oh yeah, but I don't know what I would do. It's sort of a platitude, the notion of do something that scares you. But I think that's actually true, except that I would put the qualifier, do something that scares you a little. you know, that it's the times where I did something that scared me a little too much, and I thought, if I'm really scared and I'm being really vulnerable, really good things are going to come, and it was too much. And I'm trying to think of a good example of that, but I think probably the best example is when, before I had started Crying Out Now and the other sites to take the focus off me, I started to try to create vulnerability. It was coming from a place that wasn't authentic or organic. It's like, what can I say now that's really gonna, so I started sharing pieces of my story. Not that I'm regretful of having done it, but it isn't necessarily something that I thought I wanted to do. I felt like I should do it. So anytime the shoulds kind of came into play for me, um, I felt like I was pushing it, sort of forcing it a little bit instead of taking a deep breath, stepping back, reevaluating, and thinking, sort of pulling it back to what's in my heart. Why am I doing all this? Is it because I want more people to look at me? Is it because I've gotten used to the attention and I just want to build a bigger audience? Or what was the point of all of this at the very beginning? And it was community and outreach and personal growth. And so I was about 2 years sober when I went on Oprah, and I talked to all of my trusted recovery friends, and to a person, they all said, I think you're crazy, but I've got your back. I'll help you through this, but do you think maybe this is a little bit much? And one of my very good trusted friends said, I can sense that you're going to do this, that I'm not going to be able to convince you not to do this. And so let's just make sure that we're, know that I'm right here. She sort of ran alongside me through all of this. And after I filmed Oprah and before the show came out, I was a mess. I was a mess because I had sort of handed over my story and trusted it to producers that I didn't know how it was all going to play out. All I knew was that it was too late to stop it. And thankfully, it all turned out fine. I was very happy with the show, and it eventually ended up bringing a lot of good things into my life. But that was probably an example of not a baby step. That scared me a lot instead of a little.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now, if a similar opportunity that was so much bigger in scale than what I'm accustomed to came along, I would be a lot more cautious and a lot more purposeful, trying to think about, why am I doing this? What does this really feed it? I have a friend who calls it the line. If you find yourself on a line and it's healing and it's fulfilling, stay on the line. Don't get distracted over here by this flashy thing or by all of these people who want you to do this. If should or have to is coming into the equation too much, you're getting away from your heart song. Your heart song is your line. The thing that when you open your eyes in the morning, you think, I can't wait to do that. And I would open my eyes in the morning and think, I can't wait to write, or I can't wait to make jewelry. But I didn't think, I can't wait to get more people to pay attention to me, or
Right.
find more readers, or advertise, or fundraise. Like, those things didn't appeal to me.
Mm-hmm.
So when I fell victim to people saying, you really need to advertise on your blog and make more money, I was like, okay. And off I went trying to do that. And it wasn't authentic. It wasn't part of my line, my heart song.
So you got to feel
And
it.
yeah, I really sort of felt like, no, I've lost the thread here. I need to take a step back and not be afraid to lose what I've built. That was another big part of my journey of would I rather be somebody who doesn't try, or who has the courage to try and fail? And I had never been somebody who had the courage to try and fail. And part of that was getting sober. You know, you stumble a lot when you try to get sober, and you stumble a lot in recovery. And also my children getting older, like, what sort of example do I want to be setting to them about how I handle failure? And I've had a lot of ideas that were, in my mind, they were awesome, and they were going to set the world on fire, and this was going to be the thing. And it wasn't the thing, because it was something that I was forcing.
But you tried it.
But I tried it, and then when it didn't work, I sulked and cried and stamped my feet like a little girl for 2 weeks and said, that's it, I'm closing everything down. And or I get a particularly nasty email, or somebody I cared about was critical of what I was doing. I went through a long period of time where it was all or nothing. You know, if I'm getting criticized, or if something's not working, I'm going to take my ball and go home. I'm done. You know, pull down all the blogs, pull down everything, because it's not going my way. I had to sit in some pretty uncomfortable spaces for a while and say, I don't need to do anything. If I'm not sure about where this is going, I can just do nothing for a while. And yeah, a little bit like 5 instead of 0 or 10, maybe even 2, and be okay with being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I would step away for an entire, huge length of time. This summer, on the early part of July, it did get to be too much, and I was totally, happily, completely overwhelmed, in not the good way. But I looked at each individual thing that I was doing, and I thought, I love all of these things, and they're all so important, and they're all a huge part of what makes me me. So they can't be bad individually, right? And my birthday is July 4th, and the day after my birthday, I pretty much had a nervous breakdown. And a friend of mine said, why don't you just turn everything off for a month? And it scared me. I didn't want to do that, because what if everybody disappeared and nobody was there? And what I did something that scared me a little. I stepped back, and by the time now I'm sort of re-entering back in the fall into everything that I do, and I'm picking and choosing and trying to be a little bit more balanced in what it is that, is it, how close to the line is it? If it's not very close to the line, it's gone. I'm not doing it anymore.
Wow. I love that. I've never heard of the line. I've heard of the beam, being on the beam.
Mm-hmm,
but the
mm-hmm.
line, what I see when you say that is almost like, how there's like ore, like gold or whatever those things, precious things in the earth. Yeah. There's like a thread
seam.
Of them, a seam.
Yeah.
And so when you say a line, I'm like, ooh, follow the gold, stay with the gold.
Yeah.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say, so I forgot to ask you at the very beginning, I usually like to start and say, have you found your calling?
I have such a love-hate relationship with that question.
Yes, tell me about it.
I heard an actress one time who got a Lifetime Achievement Award when she was like 35, and she's all bummed out. She's like, thanks, but really? Now? I don't think I'm done. So yes, I think I have found my calling, but articulating what that is a very non-specific thing. I think that, and it evolves all the time, that the jewelry was a calling. It called to me. That was something that really fueled me. I almost couldn't not do it. And the building a nonprofit and the outreach in the community, and my passion now is breaking down the stigma that surrounds alcoholism, and furthermore celebrating recovery, helping the world to understand that we do recover, and there's so many of us out there. So it started with jewelry, and it's built into something bigger, but I'm so not done. I mean, a year from now, my calling could lead me somewhere else. And so the line that I have, the scene, the thing that I follow really has to do with the nonprofit work and how much does this help me as an individual grow and help other individuals. And if I can't keep the jewelry up and I have to do something else as the underpinnings for that, then that's fine. I'll stay open to it. But if somebody said to me, held a gun to my head and said, Ellie, you can no longer do that. You can no longer be out there telling your story and encouraging other people to tell their story and helping bring addiction out of the dark and into the light. You can't do that anymore. You have to find something else. I would be crushed. That would be very hard to get out of bed in the morning. So in the sense of, have I found my calling? Yeah, that's it. But did I set out to do that? No. It's circling back to your question. So if somebody's thinking, well, I like to knit, or I like to run, or, it shouldn't be by nature, I don't think, anything huge. It really should be something that is fully absorbable into your current life, and maybe something that scares you a little, like I like to run, but I'm not a very good runner, or I can't run very far, or I'm a little overweight, or I'll look silly doing it. Those are really awesome reasons to try running. And who knows, 10 years from now, maybe you'll be, staging a 10K to help raise money for something that you care about, or you'll be a personal trainer. I mean, who knows where that's going, but who cares?
Oh, yeah.
Start small, Don't be afraid to start small, I guess, is kind of the message to that.
That's great, because I was going to ask you, like, what if you had some advice for people, what would it be? And there was just, for some reason, the way you said it, when you said, my calling, it just all of a sudden it really became clear. It's like, what is calling you? What do you hear? What is calling you towards it? Yeah. Because I think there is this, when you're like, I hate that calling, right? It's a lot of pressure. But if you break it down into really a much more, an easier bite is, what's calling you? What's capturing your attention? What makes you feel like, oh, I'd kind of like to do that, and do it. And that's what I love about your stories, because when you were buying that little rock set of jewelry making, you weren't thinking, and then I'm buying this, and then I'm going to go found a nonprofit, and then I'm going on Oprah, and then I'm going to have ever. No. And it might have been too scary if that had been on your receipt at Michael's, right? Oh, by the way.
Well, and it ties back into that fear of failure thing, or that fear of being imperfect, because even now, as great, what I call successes, I don't mean monetary, and I don't mean billboard kind of successes. I just sort of mean satisfying experiences. All of the gratifying experiences that happen to me, I really only look about 6 feet in front of me. I mean, I do that on purpose, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I start to think really big, and then my life, the frame of reference in my life and in my passion becomes, I'm not at that really big place yet. And I start to get dispirited, and I start to get, oh, what's the point of writing if I only have, 200 readers, and she's got 1,000, so I want 1,000 readers, and until I have 1,000, I'm just, I'm worthless. So I go from 200 readers to 201, and then I go, yay! And then I 202, and then I go, yay! And I'm purposefully almost fooling myself, because I know myself well enough to know that if I feel like I'm not measuring up to some lofty goal, I'll quit. I'll take my ball and go home. But if I'm just grateful for wherever it goes, sort of do your best and let go of the outcome, that kind of thing, I'm fulfilled. I'm happy. I'm grateful. More importantly, I'm grateful. So that in business ventures, or in even starting the nonprofit, we had to sit down and we had to do a mission statement, and I just about lost my tiny mind, because I don't do mission statements. I do, what are we going to do this month? What do we do this week? How can we? And so I brought really big creative thinkers on board to help me, that love to do mission statements and love to talk about finances and love to do those things, because A, I'm terrible at them, and B, they are dispiriting to me. Because I like to hover around at 40,000 feet somewhere and come up with crazy ideas. That's kind of what I like to do, but without saying it's only a success if. That doesn't work for me.
That's great. I hear celebrating along the way is really important. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about, or that you'd want to let people know about?
I think you've asked me about it all, but if if I had to roll it all up into sort of what I think the underlying message is from my story, is seriously, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. And think about the things that make you feel vulnerable. Does, being imperfect make you feel vulnerable? Does feeling like you're different, that you really, are you somebody who likes to blend in the crowd and not really be noticed? Don't be afraid to step outside of the comfort zone a little bit. And the things that you're most resistant to, lean into them, embrace them, chase after them a little bit. You can always change your mind. I would forget this along the way. Like, now if this doesn't work, it's all over. That's the beauty of life. We can get up the next day or the next hour and just say, oh, that didn't work. Let's go this way. And so much of our society, they send messages of perfection and closed off, and even, Facebook. It's so easy to compare your insides to somebody else's highlight reel. And, I'm more of, just 2 days ago or yesterday even, I took a picture of myself at the hair salon, with the things in my hair, and it was tied up here, and I sort of was like, I looked like Miley Cyrus, but a middle-aged Miley Cyrus. So I put it up on my Facebook page, and immediately my cell phone rang, and 3 or 4 of my friends said, "Are you crazy?
Oh, really?
Are you crazy?" And I said, "No, I'm me." Yeah, it's a little crazy, but it's also, I don't know, it brings people into my life that get it, that get my sense of humor, and I don't have to change who I am to please them. It automatically brings the people that enrich me into my life. So the vulnerability is really a key. It's something that Brene Brown talks about it a lot, and I pay a lot of attention to her teachings, because every time I dare to be a little bit vulnerable, really, really good things come my way. Cool. So I'm afraid isn't a good enough reason. It's just not.
That's why you're my friend. I can call you and go, Ellie! You go, do it!
Do it anyway. You can change your mind. Right.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you.
You are doing amazing things in the world, and it's just...
As are you.
Thank you. But it's such an inspiration, and I know that people are really going to get some really cool stuff from everything you shared. So thank you, and thank you for doing everything you do.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Okay.
It's an honor.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.